On this week's episode of the Autohaus podcast,
all these companies that are taking their time to develop things for our chassis, no one has to do that for us, and I've had vehicles like that where there's no support, and to see people take it upon themselves and make things available for people and to help those people out, like, I think they deserve the most support out there.
This is the Autohaus podcast. I have another special guest from the East Coast. Can you say your name and give yourself a short introduction?
My name is Kole Grove. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. I own a 1987 Toyota Corolla GTV 11, and then I also work as a marketing director, photographer, and a welder as 3 different jobs.
Awesome, man. So before this introduction, we pretty much should have just jumped right into this podcast talking about your car. So tell us about your current car.
Yeah, so I imported over a 1987 Toyota Corolla 11 GTV hatchback. And basically that just started, it's been something I've been wanting to do for years, and then it just kind of all worked out in the way. So it's been spending the last 2 years now just getting the car up to my standards and really enjoying the car as well.
So when you first brought over the car, what did it come with? And specifically, I'm talking about the engine package.
Well, so I'll kind of break this down as like a step before it too. So before I brought the car over, this is the second time I was looking for a Corolla, because the first time was right after I sold a project I was working on beforehand, and I sold the car and I was like, okay, I'm going to, look for a car now. And my initial goal was to get a coupe, 11 coupe for myself. And I actually talked to an importer in Florida, and they had a car at the time. And basically when I found the car, I was like, okay, well, now I really got motivated to sell the other project at the time. And so I sold it. And then literally the day I sold it, I called them. I was like, hey, I'll make a deposit. And they're like, oh, the car's sold.
Oh, man.
So then I spent like another probably couple weeks really looking. And at this time I didn't have the connections to bring something over myself or anything of that nature. So I just kept looking what I could find in the States, and then I ended up actually not finding anything. So actually then at that time I was just ready to do something else. So I actually went and bought a 2013 Scion FRS and built it for a year. And actually that car is really what got me into more of the HPD side and autocross and things of that nature. But I enjoyed the car for a year, and then basically I had really gotten the car to where I wanted, and I had a friend basically come to me and was like, I have a contact in Japan that can help us bring cars over, if that's something you're still interested in. And it just kind of was like, I was like, it's something I wanted to do. So I actually put the car up for sale, and I was like, well, we'll just see. And I put that price on it where you're like, no one's going to buy this at this price. Like, it's just, I have too much into it. I'm going to sell it at this price. If someone buys it, I'll take it, and start this. But if it doesn't, I'm not upset. And that backfired completely. Literally the car was up for a week and had someone come and purchase the car. I wasn't even ready to sell it. Like, I sold it with the seats in the car, everything in it that I was wanting to take out of it. So, but once that actually happened, then it became the process of looking for a car in Japan, which in itself was another almost 2 to 3 month process as well. So the car came, I sold that, and then I started talking to the contact I have, and, we were looking at auctions pretty much daily. Anything that popped up, I would look at it. And like I said, forever I was looking for a coupe, so I just kept finding coupes and things of that nature. And I would probably bid on 2 cars a week. And that's with bidding on something that was in the condition I wanted. And when I literally just kept losing auctions. Like, it was insane. Like, I would bid what I thought was good in that market, and I kept really watching like sales statistics of the car selling and things of that nature. And even at that time, the prices were just really starting to go up really fast. So I kept losing and losing. And then I think there was the week right before Golden Week, and had a car I really wanted, and same thing, lost. And then I had basically a week where I couldn't look at cars or anything because nothing new was posted. And then finally, after like a few weeks after that, my hatch popped up. And I think at this point I was just like, I'm ready to do something. And it was a clean black hatch. Everything looked good. And the description said it had a, A111 engine in the car. And with some upgrades and things of that nature on the inspection sheet. But there's no picture to go off of. So I don't know if, they have it written down correctly, or if that's even what's in the car. So I had my contact look at the car, and he said it checked out. Everything was really clean body wise. There was no rust on the car. And the engine, everything seemed to be in really good health. So we went ahead and I placed a bid for the car, and basically it got to the end of the auction. I got a phone call on a Friday at 2 a.m. in the morning from him saying the auction has ended, but we have an issue that you are the highest bidder on the car, but it's still out of what he wants the car to go for. So I had to negotiate basically with the owner about the price, and I basically had to pay he wanted an extra $1,000. So I basically worked it out, and I think at this time I was just like, all right, let's just do this, get this done. And that happened. And then, next thing I know, I realized, well, I now own a car that is, thousands of miles away from me, and I won't see it for a couple months. So that's kind of where the whole origin of that car came from, getting over here at least. So I was thinking when I gave it about 3 months, I had to learn how to do all the importation work myself. Basically, they'll do the work of like exporting the car out and getting everything taken care of, but I had to do all the paperwork to import the car, which was a whole learning experience as well. But it was literally 3 months to the date that the car showed up at the port. And then I drove with a few friends and we went and picked the car up. So that kind of gets it to where the car's actually in the US now.
During the auction, did you have any pictures to see the car?
So there was 3 pictures, which are kind of the typical ones of all the auctions, which are the front, like kind of a front quarter picture, a rear quarter picture, and then just a picture of the interior. And that's literally all I had to go off of. And, you try to judge them the best you can, and you just hope that the person that's inspecting the car for you has the same understanding kind of what you're looking for. But like I said, like I had nothing on the engine bay. I didn't know what the swap looked like or anything of that nature. So it was just kind of one of those pray and hope kind of things. And in all honesty, I wasn't looking to buy a car with a 20 valve already in it. My goal was to buy a car with a 16 valve and enjoy it for a bit, and then actually do the 20 valve swap myself. With me working at shop, and a lot of times I see where stuff's been done before someone else, and then you're dealing with those issues. So a lot of times I like to try to do everything done my way on my terms. So
Yeah,
Literally.
oh, sorry. We'll get
Oh,
into,
you're fine.
yeah, we'll talk more about those issues in a second because I know you're
Yeah.
running into a few of them right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's one of those things, I guess I realized like, well, I can save a little money. The car has a running 20 valve in it. Everything seems to be in good shape. So I guess I'll start from there and, we'll just deal with it at that point. And in all honesty, I can't be happier that I did it, that I purchased the car, just because it has been an absolute joy to own, even through some of the troubles of it.
So after the car touched down in the States and you drove it around for a while, what's the story after that?
So basically, we trailered it back home, and then I got home. And I took it to the shop that I work, and I got the car in the lift. And actually, one of my techs that works at the shop is also an older Corolla guy as well, who actually owns a coupe with an SR in it. So he was kind of like the big guide to this and really watching over everything. But we got the car in the lift, and when we got under it, we were really amazed like how clean the underside of the car was, and everything seemed in really good shape. I mean, there was like part of the center console was missing and things of that nature. But when the car was on its way, I was ordering a bunch of parts anyways. It's at 3 months of just waiting. I was like, I'm just gonna save up and order parts as I wait. But after we got it home, I think it only lasted about 3 weeks before my suspension showed up. Put all that on, and then really started pretty much enjoying the car right out. Like, I slowly started driving around more, just learning kind of its reliability. And for a long time, it showed that it was in really good shape and I could trust it. And then I think it was about 2 months later, I actually took the car to its first event at NCM Motorsport Park in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and actually drove a whole day of HBD with my friend's company, Bench Tokyo, and drove all day and really got to feel the car out. So that's kind of the early part. And then it came into winter, and in the Midwest, when winter hits, it's kind of game over if you don't want the car just to be destroyed from salt and rust. So a lot of times anymore, it's like November or early December. Any car that's like a project of mine goes up for the winter. But after that, it really became at that point, I took the car into the shop and started doing little things that I want to do. I added the run-free flares, cut and welded the arches, which this runs into kind of the first issue I had with the car, which was when I got the actual wheels and tires I have on the car now. I went to roll the rear arches, and one of the arches actually had it basically split, like two pieces of metal split. So then I realized at some point someone has welded a repair in here.
Oh man.
So I basically saw that happen, and I was like, okay. And I drove around a while with it, just fixed a bit. But at that point, I kind of was like, well, I like how these cars look with these arches and that. So I'm going to go ahead and, cut them because there's already damage. So I don't feel bad that I'm cutting these arches off on, something that was like perfect. So basically did all that work myself as well. I pulled the car in and welded the arches shut again, cut what I needed, and seam sealed everything and got those on. And then I'm trying to think what else happened that winter. I think just basic little maintenance, flushing the gear oil on the transmission and the diff, doing some brake upgrades and things of that nature. And then that kind of got into the next season where I really drove the car extremely hard which was this last year. I think in that year I drove the car in 14 different motorsports events, with that being like, I think a majority being like autocross, about 3 different HPD days, and then a few drift days as well. And then basically was really just enjoying the car, but also found another issue basically mid-season, which is kind of the big start to everything. And I'm just trying to think.
Yeah, go ahead. So what was that big issue? Don't keep us waiting.
Okay, yeah. So so it's kind of a weird thing. So I basically drove a drift event and drove all day fine. Car seemed to have no issues or anything, like nothing acting like the car's misfiring or anything of that nature. And then actually the next day as well, there was another autocross literally 4 blocks from my house, and I was like, I just drove all day yesterday. I don't know. And then my wife actually pressured me into driving again the next day.
Oh man.
So she was like, well, why not? And I was like, oh, well, that's a good point. So I went out and drove that day, and same thing, car felt fine all day and everything. And I didn't seem to feel any issues. And then that 2 days later, my actual HKS Sport exhaust came in. And I went ahead and got that on the car in the shop. And when I got it on the car, I kind of noticed once I started it, and I was one of the techs we had at the time was listening. He's like, your exhaust has like a weird note now. It sounds like it's almost misfiring through the exhaust. And I was like, and we both kind of picked up on it quick, but we couldn't exactly figure out what was going on at first. And we kind of kept looking at it, and then I think about a week went by. You know, we had changed spark plugs. I had checked all the wiring. There's spark, there's fuel, everything. So I'm just confused. So my coworker Craig basically he was like, let's just do a compression test to see if there's just something weird that we're missing. And lo and behold, we do the pressure test. Cylinder 1 is 150. Cylinder 2, 150, cylinder 3, 150, and I test 4, and it's 60 psi. And then, at that point, I kind of, I don't know, kind of my heart dropped there. I was like, oh man. And we were both really kind of struck by it though, because the car didn't feel. Before we knew exactly what had happened, we were just kind of confused because it's like the car didn't feel extremely down on power or anything of that nature. So it was just a very strange scenario. So about an hour after that had happened, I had already taken the car back home and had, I think in about 2 hours, had the head off the car. And then that's when I found what had actually happened, which was one of the exhaust valves had actually cracked and chipped, but it had made no contact with the piston or anything of that nature. So it was still seated on there, but it was just letting an extreme amount of air out on that side. So
this was really recently, wasn't it?
Yes. So it was literally it was either July of last year when this happened. So, basically I found that, and it was like kind of this thing of, okay, well, I guess we got to figure out how we're going to go from here. And the 20 valve is definitely, it's not like a head that a lot of people just know how to work with. And, like a lot of the local shops that I knew, no one wanted, basically just no one was like, I just don't know enough to really want to work with it. So I actually started kind of reaching out in that, and then someone, lead me towards Dan Steinhardt, and basically got in contact with him, and he's basically he took on the project for me to kind of get the car back up and running.
Wow. So you shipped your cylinder head out to OST Dan.
So that was initially the first plan. The first plan was, okay, I'll pack up the head, I'll ship it out. And then I started sending him kind of pictures of the valve seat from where that valve was. And he kind of was looking at it, and Dan just was like, in all honesty, I'm probably going to have to replace all the seats anyways. And he's like, so this is going to add up a lot quicker. You know, maybe we look at this route of, you know, taking one of the heads I already have here, and I'll just, you know, build it to the spec that we're thinking of. And that's actually what we decided to do, just to make things a little bit more simple. So I actually have the old cylinder head just sitting in the garage still. But so he basically took that on, and we decided just to kind of do a nice kind of factory rebuild on it, but also upgrade the valve train and the stem seals as well, just so with me driving the car on track and that, we just thought that would probably be a smarter idea than not to just, you know, with everything already off the head.
Yeah, this seems to be pretty common that there's usually a lot of, let's see, in a lot of imported stuff, there's usually a lot of Japanese only surprises that you don't realize until something goes wrong. And one of the things, I think 20 valve swap has been around for so long, but I think, you know, like for us, we're numb to like, oh yeah, 20 valve never actually came to the US until something happens like this, where you realize like, oh man, like no shop around here even wants to take on the cylinder head now.
Yeah, it's you know, it's a big wake up call, and you know, I deal with it at the shop a lot with customers too, that, you know, they want to, you know, do certain swaps with different engines, and we're just like, we have to kind of have that reminder of, you know, there's possibility of this could take much longer just from parts. And, you know, that's kind of the same scenario I was in with this is, you know, I mean, in all honesty, Dan did an amazing job on that cylinder head, and he turned it around so quickly. I think it was 5 weeks total of us basically communicating, figure out, and then me actually getting the cylinder head. And then this is also kind of, I kind of took it as, you know, you're upset at first about it, but then I kind of looked at it and was like, maybe this is a time where I can get this car built up to where I want it. So I kind of looked at everything on the motor that I really did not like how it was done in Japan, which for the 20 valve swap on that, it basically had like a huge block on the back of the head, very large lines that ran, you know, the whole underside of the driver side of the bay, and then like a few other, like the hoses I just didn't like and things of that nature. So that's when I went and decided, you know, I'm going to do the SQ kit. I'm going to clean up the entire system anyways, and, you know, do the same thing with upgrading what I can to, you know, make the best of a bad situation at that time.
Yeah, so I'm curious about this part. So what 20 valve conversion parts did you end up adding or replacing to your current engine?
So that first round, I replaced the all the coolant lines and everything with the SQ Engineering 20 valve kit. That was, and I mean, if you've seen someone that has like an old school route, like how people used to always run them with long, you know, aluminum pipes through them and then you see the SQ setup, it's like night and day. It makes the engine bay look so much nicer, and it makes it so much nicer to work on the car and, you know, do what you need to keep it maintained.
I was gonna ask, did your 20 valve have the Home Depot pipes when you first got it?
It didn't have, so what it had is basically this, I mean, like, I don't know how to explain how large the block for the coolant on the back of the head was. Like, I mean, it was probably a millimeter away from the firewall. Like, you could not, if you needed to get to the trans bolts on top,
it's not happening. And you just can't, there's pretty much, it blocked all the access, but it ran, basically it had that to two 90s out. Then there was an aluminum pipe in between two couplers basically. And then those hoses ran to the radiator. So like I said, it just looked like this jumbled mess under the intake side. And I was just like, I remember the day I even got the car, I just looked at it, I was like, I'd hate that. And I think a lot of that comes with like kind of my art side and design side. Like some of that stuff like that just really bugs me really fast. And that's really the big thing on that. Like it already had a Dizzy relocation kit to the front as well. So that was already done. So I didn't have to run that at that time.
Which Dizzy relocation kit did it have on it, or what does it look like?
So I had this at one point. I talked to someone who knew exactly what the relocation kit was, and now I've lost it in my head. But basically, the way it works is there's a plate that bolts to the front side of the engine right under the cam gears. That positions the Dizzy right on the non-BVT cam gear, and then that cam gear basically has a pickup for the end of the Dizzy that you drill and tap onto that cam gear. And then that's kind of how it's set. So it's sitting right kind of on that front of the engine. So it was, I mean, I would say probably really similar to the design of the SQ one, but I just think this was a much older style at that time.
Better than someone cutting a hole in the firewall.
That was another. It's funny you say it, because that's like the other fear I had when I read that. I was like, please don't have a hole in the firewall. when I first got the car, like when I first got the picture, when my contact that picked up the car to ship it, he sent me the picture of the engine bay. I was like, oh, thank God, there's not a hole in the firewall.
I think what's it called? I think there's an old option video or something with someone doing an old school 20 valve swap, and he's standing in the engine bay with a sledgehammer, hammering away to make room for the Dizzy on the back of the head.
Oh, there's so many old ones. I think there's even old. Why can't I think? Out of nowhere. I've seen so many videos from Japan of people like making jokes of 20 valve swaps with the Dizzy just shoved into the firewall and it's just, I can't even imagine working on a car with that. I know there's a lot of guys in Ireland that still have that style and they tend to love it. Dealing with what the little space that's back there already, I just don't even want to think about it.
So are there any other 20 valve conversion stuff that you replaced or added while it was stateside or while it's been in your care?
So basically that everything got done, the head got put back on, and the car's run great since then. And like I said, continued to drive it the rest of the year at a bunch of events. And I got to drive an event before all of the COVID stuff happened this year, like literally a week before everything got shut down. But at that time, with this kind of going on, a lot of the stuff I like to do with driving, with BMX and stuff of that nature, I had to kind of stop doing just because everything was closed. So I ended up being able to save quite a lot of money at this time. So I'd actually saved enough to change the car from the stock blacktop ECU and the old ignition system to switching to a Link Monsoon that Mark from Panic Wire built up for me, and then also using the MRP coil pack conversion kit. So I literally, as I told you before we got on the phone, I had just finished up my last little bit of relooming my harness to make it nicer to my standards now.
Yeah, so I'm really curious explain the distributor issue you're having right now.
So so what actually happened is I had initially when I decided to go coil and plug, one of the big things was just the performance of it, and also aesthetically, I wanted to move the the Kaz and the Dizzy back to its original location on the back of the head. And that was initially what I wanted to do, just to hide it, and then there would be no plug wires or anything, and just look awesome. But lo behold, I went to move it back and found out that with this old style relocation kit that was already on the car, um, it won't bolt back up to the head OEM wise, and won't make the connection to the end of the cam. So with that, I actually just put everything back on the front, and it still looks great in that nature. I think it looks really nice with the polished MRP cap and the velocity stacks being polished. But what had happened is we went last night to fire the car for the first time, and have everything set properly and the car was acting like the ignition was 180 out. And I think we basically come to figure out that, when you're relocating that, it's actually, if you think about how that was positioned, it's actually changing its orientation. So the ECU was thinking it's going to pick up a normal distributor, and that wasn't the case. So basically, first startup, basically no start, and then just a big bang through the intake side from a backfire. So me and Mark had to kind of go back and forth, and I had actually, while I was waiting for Mark to email, I'd actually looked at the Dizzy base, and I was like, I just had this in my head to just say, let's just rotate this 180 degrees, just turn it 180 degrees and see if it fires. And when I did that, it actually fired right up. So at that point, I was like, okay, so the signal is signaling to fire basically 180 degrees out. So Mark kind of talked through with me how to get into the Link PC software and change the ignition timing to basically, I had to basically minus it out 360 degrees. So it was set at 350 for the ignition time, and I had to set it to -10. And then like I said, it got it re-put everything back out was, and then it fired right up after that.
So so how close are you getting the car right now to getting like I guess roadworthy?
Really, in all honesty, we'll probably get off the phone. I have to hook up my reverse switch again, and I'm probably gonna take it for a test drive.
Oh, awesome, man.
It's all set up and everything. So I've just been, actually, me and my wife have been sitting there the last few days while I was waiting on a few other things, and we were just relooming the harness, like taking all the corded, like it was just covered in big corded, covering, and just taped everywhere. And it made the whole swap look really kind of junky to me. Like, I just didn't like how it looked.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually went and got like mesh split loom and literally undid the entire harness and reloomed everything, kind of redirected wires to where I wanted them, so they're hidden and so they're easy to work with and things of that nature. So I'm kind of at the point now where I've gotten the engine bay to where I'm happy with the 20 valve swap now, like completely. It's set up to how I want it, and with quality parts that I wanted to use. And now I'm kind of feel like I can focus on kind of a different area of the car now.
Awesome. So one other thing I'm interested in, like the overall picture of being a Corolla enthusiast in Indiana. What's the scene like over there for being a Corolla guy?
So it's kind of, there's not a lot of us in the directly in Indianapolis. There's probably, I know of 5 people maybe, but it's very kind of spread out, and it's not like I see, like, I know you guys with the NorCal meets and that, and like some of the East Coast guys, I see, everyone gets together and does these things, and that's kind of not the case as much here. I have a few friends that, I have a friend that uh, actually owns Rutledge's old Levin that I'll meet up with him, and we'll kind of go drive around, and then like Craig that I work with at the shop, he has his car, but it's also down right now, so he's kind of put that on the back burner. So it's like having someone to talk to about things, but we don't get to go and drive a bunch. So really, a lot of the guys in the Midwest, we kind of try to get together when we can. My good friend Jacob from Lexington will meet up at like track days and that, just so there's more cars together in that. But it's definitely a lot. It's pretty spread out, and especially in Indy, there's definitely just not the type of car is just not what a lot of people here would want. This is definitely a very big city on racing, but also in there's so many drag racing teams and IndyCar teams that it seems like everyone's really mostly just trying to build everything that's the highest horsepower.
Oh, that's interesting. From what you just said, drag racing's the popular motorsport over there.
Yeah, it would be. That is, I would say, especially in Indianapolis, that is probably the biggest that that a normal kind of enthusiast would get into easily. I mean, we do like our SCCA group in Indy. We have quite a lot of members in that too. So I mean, there's still a lot of people doing that range and that, but it seems like a lot of like the younger guys stuff getting in that's what they kind of get into is drag racing and just trying to get the highest horsepower number possible. We do have like a few people that are good HPD guys that most of them are like Honda guys, so it's someone I can still meet up with, and we can kind of go drive back and forth with each other and have fun still. But it's definitely a little as far as just the Corolla community in general, it's a lot more spread out for sure.
Mm. So interesting.
That's
With drag racing being the most popular around you and also not having a lot of Corolla owners around you, how did you personally get into this chassis?
so as funny as it is, for years, since I was probably 15 till the last 4 years, I had literally exclusively built like Volkswagens. I built a lot of like early like Mark 1, Mark 2s, and Mark 3s, and I just kind of was and like when you're doing that, I was always interested in building, with the Volkswagen engines, they have like the 8-valve, and I always got really interested in people building like 8 valves with, either carbs or ITVs and things of that nature. And I think just kind of when you're in that realm and you start looking at different engines of that nature, if you're thinking of an engine that those boxes going to tick, I mean, any of the 4As are going to run into that. So I kind of kept running into them, and then I had another friend locally that worked at a Volkswagen shop that's also a Corolla guy, and he kind of introduced me more to it. And then I'm just kind of one of the people I like I'll start seeing something, I start researching more and more, and slowly I just really kind of fell in love with the cars over time. Like I kept seeing them, and I just loved the body of the cars, the engines and that, and this is without even driving one. Like I just absolutely just was in love with the car even before owning one or even getting to drive one. So it's just kind of, I think, got to a point where after building the same kind of brand for so long and chassis, I was just kind of ready for a new challenge. And I think that's kind of when it was just like, okay, we're going to make this happen. So that's kind of where that led into that, basically.
So is your current Levin your second Corolla? Is that right?
No, it's actually my first one.
Oh, okay. Um,
So,
wow, that was a big jump then to have the first
oh
one
yeah,
be the
it
imported one.
yeah. I basically, and I'm someone who I like to do just a lot of research and learning just to do it. Like I genuinely love just seeing how things work, how different cars, different issues with cars and things of that nature. But from building other cars and that, I've basically picked up on what I was going to need to buy something properly, and talking with other people and that, it kind of definitely helped me direct to what I wanted. So, but a lot of it was just a lot of self research into what I was going to want and what I was getting myself into.
A couple of common themes during our conversation. You sound like a very patient and well-researched person.
I I think I think a lot of it just, yeah, I think, I've worked at a couple shops in the last 10 years, and when you work in them and you see how, cars go together and how long projects can sometimes take you, I think it makes you have that knowledge that some stuff's going to take time. Um, so I just, that's kind of where that comes from. I just, I don't want to try to rush things just to get it going. And I sometimes start doing that, and I got to tell myself, okay, no, we're not doing this. Just, but I think a lot of it does just come from working, kind of in that industry, and seeing that side of dealing with customers, having to explain to them, why a part's held up, what we're waiting on. There's a lot that goes into it, because you don't think of, okay, you send a block out to get at the machine shop. They're on their own production schedule separate from yours, so you have to kind of, you learn that, like, you're not everyone's first priority. So you got to, like, kind of learn how to work that together. And I know me and John that I run the shop with, we tell customers that a lot. Like, we are very open with what's going on. It's usually not a big issue on normal service and things of that nature, but when someone's doing like a build that's taking, they have a really big list of things they want, we have to kind of get that expectation of how long this is going to take.
Can you talk about the jobs, and that's plural, jobs you work now? Because it seems like you work a lot of varying jobs and you also have a lot of varying hobbies. So why don't we talk about your jobs first?
So, okay. So right now, what I would call basically my full-time job that I do is I work for a company that builds fire safety systems and, like, pumps to move water and oil around. And what I do there is I'm at one of the last parts. I take the pump and I will actually mount it to a base and either weld an electric motor to it and align everything, or I'll actually put that on a diesel engine and assemble that, and then it gets sent out to paint and then to the customer. So that's kind of, the job I do, as I guess just the job, so we have benefits and things of that nature. But then I also work at a shop part-time that's called Premier Auto Sports here in Indianapolis. And what I do there is I do the marketing work. I take basically do all the photography for the shop. And then I also am the person that will do a lot of kind of random jobs for customers that sometimes are a little bit more artistic or take an eye for. So I literally do all the fender rolling at the shop. I do little things, just like if people want decals laid out on cars and things, I'll lay them out and install them. Tire stickers, things like that. It's always kind of random things that get kind of thrown at me, but I just take it on as something to kind of help the shop and keep the other guys working on what they need to get done. And then outside that, I basically will do freelance photography and design work as well.
Yeah, definitely a lot and varying. Holy crap.
Yeah, it's very, it's like sometimes it's so hard. Like I've literally like tried to write like resumes and things, and I've had so many people in interviews be like, I have no idea how to take your experience because it's so out there, because I MIG weld every day, so I'm not like I just get to do basic MIG welding every, but you learn those skills and that helps, and I'm happy on that side with it. But then I also really enjoy doing like my marketing side, doing the photography work, and doing what I can with the car. So I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, where it's like I just like to learn things. I enjoy learning a new challenge and kind of pushing myself to learn things because I think I've just learned that me sitting around having idle hands doesn't work very well.
So, regarding your hobbies, specifically going through your Instagram, um, BMX, and then I see you. Do you paint also?
Yeah, so so I'll kind of start with the easier one, which is painting. And so painting just kind of when I was younger, as a kid, would in high school, I just drew a lot. Pretty much in class I would be listening, but it's like kind of like a thing I would just sit there and doodle, and actually kind of helped me concentrate a lot. So, with the winter time and that here in Indy, I don't a lot of things I love to do, I can't do as much just because of the weather. So I kind of took it back on as a thing I'm gonna start maybe drawing and painting again, and basically started doing a few just for fun, and some recommendations from like my wife and things of that nature. And then it turned into people asking me to do like commission work for them and things of that nature. So I've kind of got into that, and now kind of with stuff kind of ramping back up, I've kind of dropped a little bit on it just because I can kind of start doing some things I wanted to do again. But it's just kind of a fun release for me, I guess. And it's the same thing. Like and before that, like I had a big thing of building like Gunpla and things of that nature. So I think it's just anything I can to just kind of work with my hands, just to have fun.
All right, and then the last one that's very close to me also, BMX.
Yeah. So this is, so BMX has probably been probably one of the main things in my life for over 18 years now. So I really started riding when I was about 12 years old. And then just, it just started with watching the X Games. Like my parents would just be like, oh, here, we can watch this. And I'd see things, and, watching all the, watching Dave Mirra and things of that nature, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then my parents got me like a proper BMX bike, and I started riding a bunch. And then the more you get into, and it's very similar, and that's why I think it's easy for me to connect in the Corolla community as well, just because in BMX it's the same thing happens. You kind of get deeper into things, and you start learning about these different groups of people, different outlooks and everything. So it went from me just being that kid watching the X Games to now I'm watching videos of underground guys, and then kind of changing my style of riding to that as I grew up. So it's been, it's still to this day probably my biggest stress relief and one of my favorite things to do still.
Yeah, seeing you actively do it, seeing you actively still ride your bike, like really makes me envious because I think you're only a year older than me, but I just think like, oh man, my body hurts so much right now. I don't know. I don't know. I like as much as I want to get back on my bike, I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah, I really think, and I've had a lot of, I mean, like I said, when you've been in something for 18 years, like I've had a lot of friends come and go. Like I remember all the dudes that I looked up to when I was younger, like being like, oh, these guys are so cool. And then I started riding with them, and then they get out. And then all the people I grew up really riding with, we are all the same age. And then some start falling out. And then, I've had friends come back after not riding for 4 years and, start back up. And I mean, really, I guess I just never had a reason to stop. And I guess it's really mostly because it helps me so much relieve stress that any stress that I have, I can kind of release that way. I mean, I would like, in all honesty, yeah, at 31, it's still, I still get beat up, and there's days where it takes a little bit longer than it used to kind of recover from it, for sure.
So I've seen in one of your Instagram videos, it looks like you're at a park where you can just flow through that course. But I guess what styles of riding do you do with your bike? Like, do you go to parks? Do you mainly do street stuff now?
So it's actually changed. So when I was younger, I was a really, really, really big like park rat. Like I rode skate parks pretty much exclusively, and it was mostly because most of my friends, that's what we all rode, and we had a really good amount of local parks around that were nice indoor parks. But as those kind of dwindled, and and the scenes kind of changed in that, so I then kind of switched to being more of a street rider, and it was the same thing. I just kind of wanted a new challenge and learn things. And now it's kind of funny, I'm actually kind of reverting back to being kind of more into park stuff and trying to flow around a little bit more. I literally just put my brakes back on after not running brakes for 10 years.
Oh my God.
And it's been kind of a learning curve. Like, it took certain tricks, it felt super weird having brakes again. Like, I was just like, I don't know how this works now.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's just fun to change it up and do different things.
There's so many parallels for me between BMX and Corolla because we're similar age. I think you can feel the sentiment. It's like, it's always been cool to skate, but like BMX, you kind of had to explain to people like what you actually do, or like why you ride a small bike, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's been my life, is like everything I've been into has been that way. It's like, it's kind of, it's kind of funny now because a lot of stuff is like, I think the popularity of Corolla is going up. The popularity of BMX has widened out a lot more. And even like, I think of even like me growing up watching like anime and stuff. When I was a kid, that was not a cool thing at all.
Oh yeah.
And now it's like every kid I talk to, they're like, "Oh, I watched this," and I'm like, "Man, that must be nice." Like, I feel like I used to get like, I felt like I had to hide like everything I did outside. I wasn't telling people I was watching. I just kept it to myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is funny in that way, but it also, I think that there's other parallels with it too, of just even your attitude at going at it. Because I mean, if you really get into riding, you're gonna have to learn how to work on your bike. Because I know I couldn't afford to keep taking my bike in and having someone adjust something, or if I wanted something. Like, I still remember this day, the first time I laced my own wheel, because I ordered a new hub and I ordered spokes. So I was like, I'll just use my old rim. I took it to a bike shop, and the owner looked at it and he was like, "Yeah, it'll be like $150 to lace it." And I just was like, I'm like a 16-year-old kid. Like, I'm not like, I don't have $150 to spend to lace a wheel. So I kind of was like, okay. And I kind of went home and just looked at a wheel and decided, all right, well, I guess I'm going to take this wheel apart and try this. And, just start from there. And, then, yeah, the first one is not the best. And then the next time it just got better and better. And it's the same thing with, like, I even relate that to driving and HPD stuff. Like, you keep driving and there's events where I'm sitting there like, I'm doing terrible this event, and then the next session I learn kind of line, I feel better, and then by the end of the day I feel confident where I'm at. And I know a lot of that comes from BMX. So there's so much times where you're trying to learn something and it just fights you. I mean, I know, let's see, it took me 3 years to learn how to do tail whips. Like, it literally took 3 years of work to learn one trick. And it was like, for a solid year, it was like putting one foot on a pedal and like not getting the other one, or just touching my foot
And then I just remember the day it worked, it just like clicked. And then ever since that day, now it's just like, okay, I can do them. And it's kind of that same, thing. But I also have other weird things with that where like I'll be driving on track and I don't know if you've ever been like trying to land a trick and you get in this like weird kind of almost like red mist phase of like you are trying something, you're sending yourself down like a rail or something, you just keep taking it and you just keep getting up, like to the point where you're falling, you get up and you don't even check yourself, you just run right back up. You're like, all right, I'm going to keep going. And I've learned as I started doing more HPD that I had to like learn how to turn that off, because it's like it becomes really dangerous fast doing that. And while you're, on a track. So it's kind of funny. I had to like kind of almost unwire my brain from BMX for some driving as well.
That's a really good point. I was just about to say something about that, but then I realized like, yeah, like if you go off track, you really do need to like reset yourself and like put yourself in a better place. You can't just like go right back at it. No, I totally get what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, I've become kind of the person, like if I feel at all fatigued or anything of that nature at track, I pull off and I'm like, I'm done for the day. Like I've had it where that's happened, like where there's still like a session and a half left and I'm just like, I can tell I'm not mentally focused. And once again, I think I can realize that from riding my bike. It's just like I can tell when I'm not feeling it anymore. Like my brain's not working correctly. I need to stop. But it's kind of, I just try not to get in that phase of that same thing where you get into the thing where you're just so focused on trying to land something that you don't even care what's going on. Like I've had multiple times where that's happened to me riding, where like I've like fallen 8 times doing a rail and then literally a security guard's running out to tell you, hey, you gotta leave, and I'm like ignoring him as I'm trying to just do it one more time and then doing it, and then you're like, all right, I'm good, and then you're done, you're like, all right, I'm good, and then kind of afterwards you're like, that was kind of ridiculous, I should not have done that.
Yeah. So while you were talking about riding, it just dawned on me 2 other parallels I can think between BMX and Corolla is getting stranded on your bike, and then also like, how do you say it? Like weird, like band-aid techniques or like band-aid parts you'd have to put on your bike. Like you probably remember
Yeah.
back in the day before chain guards, when we had like 44 tooth gear sets, that people would run like motorcycle chains on their bike because you would break chains all the time from grinding.
Yeah.
Like people who like aren't familiar with BMX, they see your bike with no brakes and they're like, what do you mean you don't have brakes on your bike?
Yeah. I mean, man, the days of old bikes were, I mean, that's something too, and that's kind of even progressing with with car technology too, is like bike technology now is so much nicer. Like my bike weighs, probably half as much as it did when I was 12 years old and had no strength. And now, it and stuff's so much nicer now and more durable. But yeah, it does, you do get a sense of learning how to like, okay, I have to just get home. This is like, I've had like, I can think of like busting like a chain and then I didn't have a chain breaker, and like literally sitting there on like using like an Allen wrench or something, trying to push the pin out with like a rock,
Oh my God.
like hitting it on the ground and like trying to do that. And then, or just trying to get a pin back by hitting it with a rock. And it's just like, once again, this is why now I think even now with that stuff is why I buy the tools and keep them with me at all times, just because like I don't like doing that, because I've just ruined things doing that. And I kind of talk myself out of that with the car, as with the car now. When I was younger, I used to do it on all my there'd be times I'd be like, well, that broke, I guess I'm just gonna wire this together and hope this this will fix it for now, and this drive on it. But yeah, now I try to not do that. especially with the Corolla now. It's definitely baby the car a lot, you know, with an extent of, yes, I drive it hard, but like I do care for the car a lot. So if I think something's off, I'm that person that'll stop and I'll be like, all right, I have to figure out something, or we're just gonna have to tow it home.
Yeah. Let's see. We're a little past our 1 hour mark, but
Mm-hmm.
one thing I wanted to mention is that like the reason you first came on my radar is because you started sharing or putting in your story the Autohaus podcast, which first of all I really appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Like you taking it upon yourself to share the podcast and everything. So um I mean I just wanted to thank you for that first of all again.
Oh, it's no issue at all. You know, like I said, like, and that kind of goes into a lot of like what I'll post in that. Like, if I post stuff in that, like, I tend to try to share the companies that, are doing these things for our cars. I pretty much every post I am tagging, Battle Garage and T3, Panic, and all these companies that are taking their time to develop things for our chassis. No one has to do that for us. And I've had vehicles like that where there's no support. And to see people take it upon themselves and make things available for people and to help those people out, like, I think they deserve the most support out there. And that, even with you, sharing a lot of information that's been lost through old forums and things of that nature, that's something I think that needs to be shared with people, because those are, I want, for me, I would want my money to go to those people that are, actually putting things back into our community, not just here to make some money and run. Like, I was just, I was listening to that Breeze Fab one, and like, I'm decided now. Like, I'm when it's time to buy new links in the back, I'm doing that just because, it's someone building something on their own for someone else. And I just think that's awesome to me. So I really think it's important that people, share who's doing positive things for the community.
You totally reminded me. That goes back to another BMX parallel, how it's so strong for the community to support rider-owned companies.
Yeah.
And
Eh,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say with that too, I mean, there's a big thing going on in BMX where people don't like how, companies like riders are using Instagram to post clips. A lot of DVDs are dying off. It's just things of that nature. But then, like, people, like, this is the point I always tell people, is like, if you don't like what a company is doing, the easiest way to stop that, is support a company that is doing what you want. I mean, I ride a Terrible One frame because since I was a kid, I've always been into what Taj and Joe did. So that's why I, spent that money, my hard-earned money, to support them. And it's kind of that same parallel. If you see what someone's doing that you like, that's the easiest way to help that, is to spend your money with the people doing what you like.
Yeah, you made a really good point too. And then support definitely can come in more than one form rather than money.
Oh yeah.
Because like, give you an example, like not everyone can, for example, afford brand new stuff from Battle Garage. Like I get it, right? Or not everyone is local to the Autohaus. It's not feasible for for you to bring your car here to get worked on and support us that way. But there's other ways you can support, right? Like exactly what you do, like sharing the content, or leaving a review for the company on like their Google Business or Yelp, or if they have like this podcast, leaving a review on iTunes. That totally help. That's totally another way that you can support a company, not in monetary terms.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the, us being, I work at a small shop. It's the same thing. Like, that's why I try my hardest every customer I deal with. to make sure that they have a great experience, because word of mouth is probably one of the best ways for people to, come to you as for a business, So, I appreciate anyone that shares our things, and that's kind of why I think I see that in the same realm. Like, I share the company, the things that I like what they're doing, because I think that, like I said, I think I want them to get that support and that help from the other people. So,
One thing that I want to touch back on, because you're still active in BMX, have you seen any BMX people, or like I would say personal brands or companies that have like adjusted to modern times? And I'll kind of frame this for you. I know music industry has changed where it's not actually, you can't sell physical copies anymore because no one's buying physical. So
yeah.
it's changed from, it's not the music that makes money, like it's not the music download, it's what happens afterwards. So like the touring, the merch sales, that's what's actually getting artists money now. So in that context, have you seen any like BMX personalities or companies like adapt with the times like that?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of riders now who have, really taken on with using kind of social media to market the companies they're riding for and market themselves. I mean, it's definitely out there, and it's a very weird thing, because I know a lot of people are actually, like there's a lot of people in BMX that are against that too. It's weird. It's a very strange thing. Like, and I think you have to kind of look at it as like, some people are, if you're a professional getting paid to do this, like, your job is to share things and, make things happen, to help that company out. So that's what you're going to have to do. But I mean, there's a lot of brands now that are, switching to social media, or even switching to self distribution, just because it's easier for them to run a store, cut costs down and do it themselves, instead of, using different bike shops and things of that nature. Like, there's a lot of that's kind of going on. um I'm trying to think. I mean, like, I know, like, Dennis Anderson, who's like one of the, probably one of the most talented writers right now. I mean, he literally flat out says he does not like social media, but he posts clips, every week or so, and shows what's going on with him, and to help support his sponsors. So, you know, he does what he needs to do, but he's not just sitting there on it all day. So I think people are learning to adapt to it, but there's also always going to be this group of people that, don't want to adjust to it, because it is a very counterculture type thing there. It's not like a normal company base for a lot of people. Like, some people literally love companies just for the fact that they won't conform to any of that. So it's kind of, definitely a split thing, and I think it's one of those things you just have to do. You have to enjoy the route that you like. If you like that company, that's who you support, and if not, you go this route. But it's a thing that it's all, it's in the name. It's freestyle BMX. You can do whatever you want. If you don't like riding street, you can go ride trails instead. If you don't like trails and you just want to ride a rail all day, no one's sitting here stopping you from it. So it's just, I think I tell a lot of people, instead of getting so angry at it, you just need to do what you want to do, and that's really it. Just worry about what you enjoy, and, have fun with it.
I hate to turn this into the BMX podcast, but the more we talk, you pique my interest more and more. So one thing I want to talk about, similar, so we can have a Corolla part in this. BMX and Corolla, although they've gained in popularity, I still think these two are still counterculture. Whereas like the other side of that is, like, I would say skating and the S chassis have been more mainstream.
Oh yeah, that's still 100% true.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
I'll give you an example, like a recent quote. I watched a documentary about like the evolution of skate shoes, because there's not really been like a BMX shoe, right? We've like bought skate shoes to ride our bikes in. Very, very few like rider owned companies are like BMX specific shoe. And the reason we're talking about shoes, so the owner of the skate company Hookups, I think he was talking about how like Nike's big into skating footwear right now, but back in the day, like he said it, like Nike used to shit on us, like they thought skating would be this like dumb fad, and now that it's become so mainstream, that's why Nike's like had like their giant corporate hand in skate shoes right now.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of I mean, this is exactly why I pretty much wear Vans exclusively in that, is just because they've supported, skating for so long, and they're still a company that's still supporting BMX a lot and giving, they're doing events for BMX and things of that nature. But it is true though that, I still see, I mean, when I go to the skate park, I will tell you there is, for every one BMX, rider, there is 10 skateboarders. I mean, that's just my normal thing. Like I'll a lot of times when I go ride, I'm lucky to have one or two other people to ride with. It's just kind of it's definitely not getting picked up as much as skating is, for sure. And and I think Corolla now is kind of turning into kind of another realm, because you have so many people now that want to go, the restoration route. So now you're kind of getting like a new group of people in as well, that were never kind of in that early stage of like, where these were, drift cars or track cars that people just are kind of like, oh, well, these are never going to be that expensive. And then now you got all these things like popping up like crazy. But it's the same thing with old school and mid school BMX stuff. Like people are, I have parts that I had that I never thought would sell for the money that they do now, that I just, as a kid, like threw out. Like, I think like one of my old T1 frames now I could easily sell for, $300 something dollars. And it's like, that frame's over 15 years old. Like, that's insane to me that a used frame can still be that expensive. And I mean, the old school stuff's insane. Like, people are spending like $1,200 on old frames just to have them. And half the guys don't even ride. Like, half of them have never rode in their life. They're just collecting it.
That's another good parallel, that old bikes becoming collector items, where similarly, especially in the Bay Area, I think people are starting to realize that these chassis are becoming collector cars. So yeah, a lot of the better examples are actually being bought up just to essentially collect dust in collections right now.
I mean, I'll be honest, like, I sometimes even have, I have so many people, it's like, I have a very clean car. An example of that, really the only thing outside wise that's been changed has been the run free arches. Otherwise, it's a completely stock exterior of the car with like a Zenki front lip. But I connect a lot more with the older style kind of cars, where you have, ones with like full run free kits and things of that nature. And I have like sometimes a weird debate in my own head of like, I kind of want to go that route, but then I feel like people don't want to see that route either. And it's a weird, almost like pressure to keep the car this way, but and that's also, I try to tell myself, it's like, it's my car, I'm going to keep driving it. It's the same thing when I did the flares. Like, I'm doing this because this is how I want the car to look. I plan on keeping the car forever. I mean, my wife will attest, she will not let me sell this vehicle, because she's been involved a lot with, bringing the car over. And like I said, she literally spent time the other day helping me reloom the harness, just to be, a part of it. And she actually the other day was learning how to drive stick in the car for the first time as well. So it's just kind of like, it's kind of a special car to us now. But
like I can see that weird side because I've ran into people like that at events, like BMX events, where they'll see something I have, or like, 'cause I even still run some old parts just to kind of have that little throwback thing on my bike. I like to run old stems. I actually still run a 2006 Animal stem, which they just re-released like a month ago
Oh my
as
God.
like a collector. Like, and it makes me, I have so many people that like tag me like, oh, you should buy this. I'm like, I still have an original one that's on my bike. Like, and I've had people ask me about like, oh, well, that's, this. And I realize they just want it to keep it. And it's like, I run this just because I've had it since I was a kid. I've grown up with it. And it's kind of like a reminder sometimes, like remember where this came from, like where you started from.
So many things I want to say. I'll just spit it out first. You know how long it's been since I've been on my bike. Speaking about stems, I have an Odyssey chock full of nuts stem on my bike still.
Oh no, man.
And
Oh, that's in the time where they were just trying to, any technology that someone come up with, they were just throwing at BMX.
yeah,
Like the idea that stem's pretty awesome in the way that, if you accidentally strip out, a normal stem, you're screwed. Like, no, most people don't have the ability to like helicoil a new thread into a stem, So like the idea that, oh, well, it just came out, I'll just replace this bolt and bam. Like, it's a good idea, but it's also way over designed for what it's being used for.
so, and then the other BMX Corolla parallel that you reminded me of. There's so few of both of us that when you see someone on the street, it's immediately like both of you guys are like, we need to be friends, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like, in all honesty, like that's why I try a lot of times try to connect with more people through like social media and that with Corolla. It's just because I think a lot of it is, I don't have people super close to me to like hang out and do Corolla stuff all the time. So it's like I have to kind of like do it vicariously through friends in different states and things of that nature. And it's been awesome because so many people have been super nice and open to it. Like, I mean, I talked to all the guys from the East Coast a bunch. I've met a lot of people from like your area, and same thing. And then even in Japan, I've had a lot of people like, comment and say they enjoy what I'm doing with the car and that. And I think that's so, it's so cool to see that. And it reminds me a lot of BMX when I was younger. Like I used to just trap. Like I remember this one instance in particular where we had people come into our local park that were from St. Louis, which is about 4-hour drive. And they showed up at our park and we rode with them for this session. We talked the whole time that, and then they basically were like, told me and my friend, hey, you should just come and stay with us sometime and we'll show you around. So literally a month later, we went and stayed there for 2 weeks after knowing someone for, like a 4-hour riding session. And literally they treated us, they took us everywhere, showed us every spot. I stayed at 3 different people's houses for 2 weeks, just riding, over my Christmas break between, like school. Like that, like I still find that so awesome. And I feel like a lot of that in BMX with social media is actually kind of digressed. It's kind of, it seems harder for me to meet people to ride than it is for me to meet people with Corollas and talk with them. It's kind of strange.
Interesting. Well, I think someone said it in the comments in one of your Instagram posts that you guys would probably talk on the podcast forever, and I'm sure we could go on for another few hours. But man, I hate to do this, but I really got to get back to work.
Oh no, I get you too, man.
Cool. Thank you so much again for being on the podcast, and yeah, we definitely have to do this again. I'll tell you what, because of you. I think you inspired me. I'm gonna take my bike out of storage. Like that's one of those like I could not get rid of. So I'm gonna take back my bike out of storage, pedal around a little bit. Before we podcast the next time, I'll tell you my thoughts.
Yeah, do it. I mean, biggest thing, man, I'm gonna tell you, just find like a good like stretching thing, like a good yoga thing and that. Like that helps so much. Like, I can't explain. Like, stretching is the biggest thing in the world before riding now.
Any last words or any shout outs you want to give before we close up the podcast?
Really, I would just, I'd just say, thanks to everyone everyone in this community that's helped, me, like Battle Garage, Mark and Matt at Panic Wire, Dan Steinhardt for his help, T3, everyone in the community that's just open and has that information. I think that's really the people that I think deserve more thanks than anyone. And then also, thank my wife and everything for, enjoying the Corolla and stuff with me, and, letting me keep riding and doing Corolla things. I know sometimes it's a lot, but I've learned to balance my time between, house stuff, family stuff, BMX, and the car. So,
do you know Matt Panic was at the shop this Monday on Memorial Day?
I saw I saw you post stuff and saw him post different things there. So I saw he was there.
Yeah.
I'm hoping at some point to be able to come down and visit you and visit Battle Garage, because my brother lives about an hour north of the Bay Area. So
yeah, make it happen, man. If you ever get to have a conversation with Matt, we have a good time. We have a good Corolla time here.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cole, thanks so much again. And we'll definitely have another podcast. This conversation not over yet.
Oh yeah, man. Just like I said, let me know. I'm always open for it.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks again, man.